Alright, so we're moving on to, it's been a while, so yeah, it's been a few weeks, but Baruch Hashem, it's nice to be back. Pick up again. Moving on to, alright, here we go. Ninth bracha. Ninth bracha is the Birchas Hashanim, right? It's the bracha of produce.
You were saying Talamantar?
Right, that bracha. The same Talamantar. That's right. So the ninth bracha, right, it's all about the produce of the land, and we all understand, right, in general, people understand that the bracha is not just about the produce of the land, it's really about money, general financial stability. And the ninth bird in the list, in the Torah, the ninth family of birds, is the nates. The nates and the family of the nates. So what exactly is the nates, and how does it relate to the ninth bracha? So there's really a fascinating Gemara here that he uses to bring this out. And in the middle we'll find a few interesting ideas as well. So here it's the Gemara in Bava Basra. Chaf Hey. What's he quoted here? Chaf Hey. Gemara says, Amar V'chanan bar Abba Marav. So V'chanan bar Abba, the name of Rav, said, Dal Ruchos Menashvos B'chol Yom. There are 4 winds which blow every day. V'roch Tzafainis Im Kulan. And there's the northern wind which blows with all the other winds. Shel Malikein Ein Ha'olam Yiskayim Afilu Sha'achas. Because if not for the northern wind, it would be impossible for the world to exist, even for a moment. And the most difficult, the most harmful of all the winds is the southern wind, Vilmali Ben Nates, right? Recognize there, Ben Nates, that's the name of the bird. But here, if not for the Ben Nates, Amidah, which upholds the world, that upholds that wind from damaging the world, the southern wind will destroy the world. So he brings a pasuk that the nates, with its wing, is able to, not literally,
but translation of nates.
So we'll get there. I want to go through his chapter first. It's chapter 20. That's fine.
He likes to keep us in
In
suspense.
general, all these birds, we don't really know most of them what they actually are. Yeah. It's all possibilities, using different chazals that say about it. Then let's observe the different birds and say, maybe it's this one. But
sorry you jumped in.
That's fine. So what is this Ben Nates? So you look at Rashi. Rashi says the Ben Nates, which is upholding, this southern wind, which is supposed to be very damaging and harmful, is Malach ha'osu b'demos nates. It's an angel. It's an angel which appears like a nates. Now nates, over here, generally is translated as a flower. It appears like a flower. So you already see some type of correlation here is going to be between the nates and produce, the flower, which eventually ends up in fruit. All right, so what exactly is a deeper meaning? How do we get? So he goes through really interesting chazal. We know there's a chazal that says that Adam is an olam katan. Man is a small world. It's a famous chazal. And there's different elements of understanding that, different levels. He wants to focus on a specific element, which is like a new idea, and that is like this. We know that the books of the Jewish philosophy, at least, they classify everything in the world into 4 categories. We've got, on the lowest level, Dalid is known as Domim. They're just like stones, can't speak, there's no growth. Somech, there's no speech, but at least it grows. Flowers, trees, Chai. The 3rd category are living beings, and Medaber are speaking beings, human beings. Those are the 4. And he says that the idea of Adam Olam Katan, right, man, which is on the highest level, right, he's able to speak. He's an Olam Katan. He, within himself, is able to, he encompasses all the other 3 levels. He's got elements of the Tzomech, he's got the elements of the Chayiv, and the elements of the Domin. And as well as when you go to Chai, when you go to animals, they encompass within themselves, they don't have the Medabra element, they've got life, but they've also got the life of the Tzomech in more specific ways, and Domim of the stones and all the things that just exist without growth. And the Tzomech, that which grows, is going to encompass within itself specific details of Domim. So he brings it out in a few ways. Number 1, there's an interesting Gemara that connects here, Tarnagolas lacholf alaf yom u'kinegdu bilan luz. So the chicken, it takes 21 days, it says, from the beginning of the process of the fertilization of the egg till the hatching. And you'll find it's parallel by trees. By the Sameach has this parallel element to it. The loose trees takes 21 days for the full process from whatever it's beginning with till the fruition. And the kelev, the dog, is lunun. It's 50 days for the full, the fetus to be born from the beginning of conception.
Do you ever ask what a loose tree is?
No. What is it?
I don't know.
It's a good question. We'll leave it as a question. We connect to Be'ilan Te'ina, and the dog, where do we find 50 days for fruition by a tree? The fig tree takes 50. Chatol, the cat, Lunun Beis, is 52 days. Connect to Be'ilan Tut, the berry tree, maybe the strawberry tree. Nowadays in Hebrew they say strawberries. Chazer Lasama, connect to Be'ilan Tapuach, the pig is parallel to the apple tree, or some say the esrog tree. Shoal v'chol minei shrotzim lavav chadashim. You have the shoal is the fox. The fox and all types of shrotzim take 6 months. U'kenegdon tvua. And tvua, grain, right? The farmer plants it. 6 months later, the grain grows. Behima daka tahura lehavi chadashim. U'kenegdon be'ilan gefen. The grape is parallel to the younger and the smaller sheep and those type of animals. Behemagasa tahurula tes chadoshim u'kenegdom be'ilan zayis. So you've got the behemagasa, like the bigger animals, the cows, the kosher ones at least, take 9 months like human beings, and you've got the olive tree that takes 9 months. And it goes on to explain it. So he says, look, you see an element here of encompassing this specific detail of conception till eventual fruition, which exists in a parallel way between, I guess we could say, the tzomeach, that which grows, encompasses, or the other way, the chai, that which lives as a being, all these animals encompass the element of growth of the trees. That's one way. Number two, really, really interesting. He's got over here 5 classifications in the Torah. There are 5 classifications in the Torah of different types of foods which we're able to eat and benefit from. Number 1, fish. The rule is, fish, there's no need for shchita. You don't have to slaughter it. You just take it out of the ground, not the ground. Got it out of the...
Water, let it die.
Maybe you got it out of the ground. What?
Just let it die.
Yeah, you can let it, that's right.
Chop
Pasuk
it
said,
up.
yes. So the Pasuk calls it asifa. You gather it in. That's all you got to do. It's kosher. Ofos, birds. Birds, you've got to be machsher. You've got to prepare it in a halachic way, which is to slaughter it. But the difference between a bird and animals, right? To the letter of the law, the birds only require 1 siman, right? Between the 2 pipes, only one of them's got to be cut with the knife. Behemos, sheton shchitos basis one. You got the 3rd category, animals. They require both to be cut. At least the majority of both have to be cut. But you got to handle both of them, the trachea and the esophagus. The 4th one is the chayos. We've got the wild animals. Chayos, which are wild animals, besides for the fact that they require the slaughtering of both the trachea and the esophagus, they also require kisei damam. There's another element. Any blood which splattered out, it's got to be covered over with the dirt. That's the commandment of the Torah. And the 5th category are shkotzim u'shrotzim.
Sorry, what was the 4th category?
Chayos, the wild animals.
Wild animal.
They require, first of all, shchita both simanim. The od,
blood.
they've got, right, kisei adam. And the 5th one is shkotzim u'shrotzim, these crawling creatures which are asur mikol v'kol. You're not allowed to eat a rat, you can't eat a mouse. All these different types, they're completely forbidden. And he says, if you look at trees, he wants to make a parallel here between these 5 and growth in someach, those things which grow. And you'll see this idea of encompassing, and the things that grow encompass that which, the animals encompass that which grows. How's that? First category, which we're making a comparison between it and the fish. Fish don't require any type of preparation. They're just, you take them and you eat them. So what's the first one? Asovim v'yirakos. So this is an interesting halacha. There's a halacha of grass and types of vegetables which they grow wild. They don't require any type of cultivation. The farmer doesn't have to deal. Certain types of wild berry trees that the halacha says that the bracha is shahakol niya bidvaro. So interesting chiddush. It's a whole sugya. But you don't make a bracha b'rei pri hadama even though they grow from the ground because they're not prominent enough. They're very wild.
We're learning Demai with Rabbi Merckx, and
Oh, yeah?
they don't require The Mai.
These wild ones.
the
Right, that's Safichim, I believe. Right. So it's that type of growth. That's the halacha says there's shahakol. There's no work at all. It just grows from the ground. Parallel to the fish. They don't need shechita. They're just ready to eat. The next level are the zaronim v'katinios. So they're beans and green beans and all those things, that vegetation. They grow from the ground. Peri hadama. It's the second level. That he's paralleling with the birds, which require some type of hechsher. You've got to prepare it with one simon. You only have to slaughter one simon. Then you've got the dogin, which is grain, that as much as they grow from the ground, we give it its own special bracha. Reimini mazonos. If it's made into bread, you've got to make the bracha of hamotzi. It's a little more. There's more work that's done with it. A lot more work, actually. And that's parallel to the behemoths, which require the slaughtering of both simanim. Then you have the fourth category, pri ha'etz. Those who grow from a tree. It's a whole different mitzius, right? It's not just growing from the ground. There's a whole tree which the fruits come off of. That he wants to parallel to the chayos, which require not only the shkita for the two simanim, but they also require kisei damim. They require the blood to be covered. And the fifth one are trees that are barren. They don't have any fruits. So that's similar to shkasim or motzim, where there is no ability, you're not allowed to eat them. They're forbidden according to the Torah. So again, you see this idea that there's some parallel and encompassing in animals in that which grows out of the ground. So he wants to, let's bring it back to over here, our bracha, the nates bird and the bracha, the ninth bracha of Birchas Hashanim. So we've got that the nates, it has this, all birds really are able to fly with their feathers. Well, not the feathers, with their wings. The nates, according to the Ibn Ezra, why is it called nates? Because nates, besides for, we're familiar with it being translated as like a spark, like a new shine of light, which is in the morning you got that. And on top of that, nates also stands to mean noitza. Noitza are feathers. This bird, the Ibn Ezra claims, has so many feathers, a large amount, much more than the typical bird. And he writes over here that some claim that the feathers of this nates actually shed every year, and it replenishes every single year. Which, all birds have that to some extent, but he's saying over here, it's in a much larger extent. That's what Ibn Ezra claims. So he wants to say, that fits very well with connecting this bird, encompassing growth of food that come out of the ground, because when you have growth coming out of the ground, you start off with the flower, and eventually it turns into, it falls off, and then you've got the fruit coming out, or the vegetation. So that's what he wants to say, that's why the nates is actually correspondent to the Birchas Hashanim, which is the growth coming out of the ground. Now, the nates, the fact that it has a lot of feathers, if you're trying to figure out, you want to know what exactly is this bird, it's not so easy, because it seems like the birds don't really have this nature of shedding a ton often every year, are the fowl that come out of, they live in the water, like the ducks and the geese, and these are kosher birds. And we're looking at a list of non-kosher birds. The nates is a non-kosher bird. So it's really going to be hard to figure out, according to Ibn Ezra, what it is. However, the Rashi tells us a word which is not English, but it's translated as a sparrow. That's what he says. Now, the sparrow doesn't have this nature of shedding its feathers all the time. What exactly could be the connection between feathers and the sparrow? So here's a few things that I found about the sparrow. And we'll see if any of them are able to connect to the idea of growth of vegetation. So we've got, it has a long tail, doesn't seem to have any significance in this. It's short, rounded wings. It's able to turn around rapidly. It hunts small birds. It has sudden ambush attacks. That was one thing I thought.
It hunts small birds. I didn't know that.
That's what I found out when I was looking through it.
I thought they were benign little things.
These ambush attacks, it's sudden, high speed. It flies through the trees and into tight spaces. And then this last thing, which is significant, it will kill prey and then pluck the feathers before eating it. That's like a normal thing with the sparrows.
Oh dear.
So I want to suggest...
It sounds like a falcon, more like a falcon.
Yeah, you're more the expert than me. I'm just looking
Well,
into.
falcons, they'll dive down and hit birds at like 90 miles an hour. And,
Interesting.
yeah.
In a second. So then, maybe you could claim that's this bird. Rashi, the way they translate it is the sparrow, but
Sparrow.
it could be like you're saying. It would fit more
There's probably
to the
sparrowhawks
description.
or something. There's probably sparrowhawks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's probably something like that. So I wonder if the element of plucking the feathers, even if it itself does, its feathers don't fall off every year, the way that he's claiming according to the Ben Ezra, which we don't know what bird that is, but even in Rashi, that's what you call the sparrowhawk. So the plucking the feathers on other birds also exemplifies this idea of the growth coming out of the ground, which of the flower coming off, and then eventually there's, the fruit. That's what I wonder. And the other element, nates, because it means spark, and there's translations of rushing. You have a dark night, and all of a sudden the sun comes up. Nates. That's what we call nates acham. The sun, all of a sudden, is shining. So something like that, where this bird is so quick, Yermatzias. So it's like coming. There's nothing there. All of a sudden, there's something there. Yesh me'ayin, as we say, something from nothing. So the same thing with a fruit. Like there's nothing there. What do you see here? You see a flower. All of a sudden, you see a fruit. So you see that correspondence a little bit. So he wants to say, if you come back to this Gemara that we started with, right? There's the southern wind, which is very difficult. It's very damaging harmful to the world. From there, what does it say? The ben nates, which Rashi says is a malach, which has the appearance of a flower in some way. It makes a lot of sense, because that is the idea of a flower, is that you've got nothing to something. You have all of a sudden growth, darting. And that's, when we say the bracha, we know every time we say any bracha, there's an angel which is created in heaven. And he's saying that when we say the bracha of Birchas Hashanim, we create this ben nates, which has this appearance of a flower. And from there, it's able to give protection. Kadosh Baruch Hu allows it to give protection to the grain. And from there, we talk about it on a more general level to our money, our financial situation. Right, so that's the bracha of the ninth bracha. If we have more time, continue on to the next bracha, the 10th bracha, Tekab Shofar. Now this bracha is at our heart, because this bracha, right, we've been in exile for so long, and we want to get out of it. And this bracha speaks about Kibbutz Galuyos. Kadosh Baruch Hu, Lasalavu, there's going to be a Tekab Shofar Gadol. We ask God, please blow the Shofar Gadol, that great shofar that the Navi talks about, which is going to be in the times of the Mashiach, and there's going to be a Kibbutz Galuyos. That shofar is going to come, and everyone's going to hear it, and all the Jews are going to come back to Israel. The Sundays, like I basically say, raise up the banner to gather our exiles. And we go on with that bracha. This bracha is correspondent to the Of HaKos, Chav Vav Samach, the Kos. So he says, before we get to explain the correspondence again, we're going to make you wait. So there's a Pirkei de Rabbi Elazar, which he uses to explain this. Elo shel Yitzchak. So this is the ram which was used by the Akedah in replacement of Yitzchak. Karnoi hasmoili, the left horn, litkoa bo b'mayim har Sinai. It was saved to be used to blow by Sinai. The pasuk talks about the shofar that was blown by Har Sinai. That was the shofar of the left horn of the ram of Yitzchak. V'heimani, the right horn of this ram, litkoa bo lasilavo. That's going to be the one that's used by Yom Hahu Yitaka b'shofar gadol. That's the one that can be used lasilavo. And the Navi talks about this great shofar that will be born, which will be blown, and from there we'll have this kibbutz Galuyos. What is the idea of the left and the right one that was going to be saved? It is saved for the Har Sinai and for the lasilavo, the kibbutz Galuyos. So he says like this. We've got, back in Parshas Bereshis, the chet of Adam Harishon, with Chava. That chet, what was the damage that it created? What was the harm? We could classify two different harms, damage that came out of it. Number one, there was the Hisariv Rabatov, the bed which existed, and at that time it was embodied in the Nachash. The snake embodied the bed of the world, the Ra. That bed had actually mixed into the Tov. The Tov were all the holiness of Adam and Chava, all the other Tov that existed. And because there was because I'll talk about this physical reality, the Nachash had a relation with Chava and put into her Zuhama. But it's not just on a physical level, right? The fact that she was persuaded through the Ra, through the bed of the snake, so that's a taruvus of Ra b'tov. The Ra entered into the Tov, which is terrible. The second element is Hisarev Tov Ra. Another damage that came out from this chait of eating from Neis Hadas that Hashem said not to do is that the good joined together into the bad. So the Svarim talk about there's sparks of Kedusha, of holiness, that when the bad came in, it was forced out. So there's holiness sparks which are forced out all over the world, outside the Kedusha. Those are the two elements of damage that happened through the chait. So he says, in order to correct these damages, we have, first of all, Har Sinai. Right? Har Sinai, what do Chazal say when we receive the Torah? It specifically talks about the damage of the Nachash, the snake that placed this harm into Chava, the Zuhama that it placed into Chava. And it says, when Yisrael, Misham Yisrael Har Sinai, Poska Zu Masan, the Zuhama, the bad which entered into the Jewish people when they stood by Mount Sinai, it just removed God. They came so close to God that the holiness returned completely and the bad was out. Now he says, if you really look at the language which is used, Paska Zuhuma Son, it only says their Zuhama got stopped. Right? The harm which entered into them, Zuhama Son, with the nun at the end, is their Zuhama. It doesn't say Paska Zuhama. The Zuhama didn't end. Right? There's, even after Mount Sinai, there's this Kedusha, these nitzosos of Kedusha, which still are scattered all over the world. And in fact, that we stood by Har Sinai, okay, so we were perfected at that moment. We, the Jewish people, but the Kedusha, which ended up spreading all over the place, is still there. It's still all over. The Mount Sinai didn't help for that. And that's only going to happen, the correction for that, the complete correction at least, it happens over a lapse of time, over the whole exile. But the complete correction is only going to be at the time of the Shofar Gadol, L'Asalava. Right now we know that anyone who doesn't believe in God in the outside world, their existence comes from that Kedusha. That's what the Svarim tell us. The holiness which came out of Adam and Chava at that time and became spread throughout the world, that's what gives existence to all this falsehood, that they don't believe in God, they don't see God. And L'Asalava, when there's going to be this reality that God exists and it's going to be so clear, so that the other way to express that is that the Kedusha, these sparks of Kedusha, there's going to be a Kibbutz. They're going to come back to Israel. All the non-Jewish nations that recognize that will also be able to exist in that way, and any falsehood is going to just fall by the wayside. So he says, if you think about the chet by Adam and Chava, what exactly motivated the chet? If you look at the psukim, you'll find that there's two motivations of the chet. First of all, the pasuk talks about the ears, the fact that she listened, she was persuaded, she listened to the nachash, and it talks about Adam also, his listening to Chava to eat. And then it talks about, the nachash told Chava, look at how great, how wonderful these fruits are, and she saw it, the re'iyah, she was able to see it with her eyes. Right, the psukim quotes here, Vatera ha'isha kitov, the isha saw that it was good. Chisava huleinaim, she saw the fruits were desirable to the eye. And then it says, Chava shama al sasas hanachash, v'hu adam shama elah, ki shamacha l'kol ishacha. God tells Adam, because you listen to the voice of your wife, therefore you're going to have this curse.
This sounds like it was a physical, like she had an appetite for it. I thought that the Nachash said you'd be like God. You'd God like.
Right, the verses do say that, but at the same verses, before and after, also talk about the fact that she was enticed by
the taste.
Yeah. It seems like there was an intellectual persuasion and there was also this physical reality. She was able to see it and it looked good. Everything together. So he says, when we have to correct this, right, any damage which came out from these motivations, they have to correct both motivations, right? We've got to correct, anytime anyone does any sin, you have to correct that which was motivated in order to pull yourself out of it. So how do we correct the Shmiya and the Riyah? So by Har Sinai, which was correcting one element of damage, you have to find a correction in shmiya and riyah, in the hearing and in the sight. And when we're dealing with loss of lavo, you're also going to have to find a correction in the shmiya and the riyah. And that's in the correcting the nitzosus of a kedusha, which had fallen to the wayside, have been scattered. So he says, if you look, you'll find it. Right? By Har Sinai, what does the pasuk say? The pasuk says, I don't know if he brings the psukim, but if you look at the psukim in Yisar, you'll see that there was this shofar gadol, there was the shofar that was blown, and they were able to hear that shofar, which is coming from Kadosh Baruch Hu, from God. And the other, I should bring the psukim. Hold on.
The shofar is at Har Sinai?
Yeah, pasuk talks about the shofar at Sinai.
No.
Find this. It must be in the psukim. I'm not finding the psukim right now, so you have to look at Parshas Yisro. You'll see that that they saw with their eyes this majesty, the majestic reality that God came down to Sinai, to whatever level they saw it, and they also discusses the Shmiya. They were able to hear it, and both of them were used in order to perfect that damage that came with the nachash in infecting Adam and Chava with the Ra, with the bed. And he even says, we find that two elements of Torah was given. Torah Shebechsav, the written Torah, and the Torah Shebal Peh. The written Torah is something which you see. You look at the letters, you're able to see it. That perfected the Riyah aspect. And you have the Torah Shebal Peh, which perfects, that's something which goes in tradition with speech and with hearing, from student from teacher. So that's the Shmir. And he says, La'asa Lovo, what do we say in the bracha? The same thing. We need to perfect all those nitzosos of Kedusha, which eventually, throughout the exile, and eventually they're all going to come back. What do we say? Tekab shofar gadol. You, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you should blow the shofar gadol. You should have the shofar gadol blown. That we should hear it. There should be a shemiyah. And on top of that, there is the sannes. The sannes raise up the banner that we could see, that they could all be gathered up. From all four corners of the land, we're all going to be gathered together. Those are the two elements that are used to perfect. So now let's come back to the bird. The kos bird. Now this one I'm not going to identify at all because nobody really knows exactly what it is. But what we could do is look at Chazal that tell us what the behavior of the kos is, or maybe more in this case tell us the way that it looks, and maybe you yourself can figure out what it is. But how it connects to the bracha, we could at least figure it out. And that is the Gemara Amidah. It says a really interesting Gemara. It says that we have, the pasuk says in Tazria, if a woman gives birth to a baby, right, in the times when we dealt with purity and impurity, so if she gives birth to a male baby, then she's impure for 7 days. If she gives birth to a female, she's impure for 14 days. Now, God forbid, if a woman miscarries a fetus, and the fetus is disformed and it appears like an animal. So the Mishnah says, Machlokas, Rabbi Shimon Meir and the Chachamim, do we treat her as impure? She didn't give birth to a human being, even a fetus of a human being. It was more like, it appears like an animal. Do we say that or not? That's the question. So Meir says that she is impure. We deal with the baby that she miscarried as if it's like a fetus, a human being. And the question is why? So Gemara, there's a whole piece of Gemara to explain, this shouldn't be true. This is not at all resembling a baby that the pasuk talks about. It makes her impure. So the Gemara says over there, discussing the different animals, Gemara goes to the bird. The case of the bird, when she miscarries that form, the bird appears like man in some way. It's not true, it doesn't. Gemara says there's one type of bird that appears like man, the karya. Now the karya, how does that appear like man? Einav holchos lefanav keshel adam. The eyes are in front of it like man. And then the Gemara even says, Yesh lissos ka'adam, another element that it has cheeks or jaws that they are straight up like man. So he says, and therefore it resembles enough that can make her impure. Okay. So he says over here that these two elements, the first one is the eyes are in front of it, as well as the listos are the cheeks, and the jaws. Those two exemplify what? The two ideas of Re'iyah and Shemiah, because the eyes are obviously the Re'iyah, like man's eyes, and you have Shemiah coming from the jaws. Now, where do you see Shemiah specifically in the jaws? Usually we say, the throat or maybe the mouth is more the speech which talks to someone and someone is able to hear the speech of the mouth, not the jaws. But Chazal say that the lechayayim keneged tefillah. There's a Chazal that says that the cheeks and the jaws correspond to speech of prayer. It brings a pasuk. Okay. So he says this bird, which some do want to say, maybe it's the owl and some type of owl. We had an owl before, the Ozniyah. We tried to say it was that one. But some want to say, the owl in some way has this, the eyes in the front and more of a standing up position of the face, the facial expression. But this bird has these two elements of man, the Shemiah element and the Re'iyah element. And this bird, which is the impure bird, it's not kosher. So it exemplifies this idea of the nitzosos of Kedusha, which are scattered throughout the whole world into the Ra. And this bird encompasses within itself that there's this Re'iyah and Shemiah element of bad in it, that it's encompassing this Ra, that it takes in the Tov, and it's not supposed to take in. It went it by accident, by the Chet, by the sin. And what we're praying for in this bracha of Tekabah Shofar is that there should be a perfection in the Shemiah and the Re'iyah that's able to bring back the Nitzos of Kedusha back to Israel and back to the Jewish people away from the Ra. Okay, I think we'll stop over here by the 11th bracha, Hashiva. But yeah, thank you for coming.